actually one part of my senior honors thesis. So this talk is primarily going to be focusing on forest and land management, and the future of this project, I'm co-teaching a seminar for the Honors College at Bowling Green State University, and we're going to be delving into many different topics related to the environment that we find in the series and in the real world. I'm not a tech person. Technology doesn't like me either. So there's a forest in a specific corner of the world. It's threatened greatly by subsistence use by local people, including through trails, paths, and human disturbances to local animals. Some people have little choice but to use the forest resources to survive. These people walk down narrow, winding earth tracks into the thick trees, swaying darkly in the distance to get the resources necessary to avoid certain discomforts in life. Dark, mysterious creatures prowl through the forest. A stream runs nearby, providing water and moisture to the forest. You enter the forest with a crossbow. Someone has been hunting and taking your resources. You think to yourself, this forest is not safe. What I'm describing, though it sounds like the Forbidden Forest, is a national natural and forest reserve in Kenya called the Kakamega Forest. And I open with this anecdote to connect Harry Potter with a very real forest in Kenya. Both ecosystems are currently removed from our physical place. The relationship of Harry Potter and environmental harm and destruction serves as a foundation to create a movement. And I'm going to be looking at the Kakamega Forest and the Forbidden Forest as one way to show that literature can guide discussions about the natural world. Again, this project is going to be transformed into a seminar in the spring, and we're going to be examining the entire series through this environmental real-world lens. And I'm going to be teaching theoretical frameworks primarily through effective eco-criticism. And some of the units that I hope to cover include animal welfare and species protection, leadership and conservation values, weather and climate change, and the psychological impacts on climate refugees. Today I'm going to present to you several points of comparison and contrast between the Kakamega Forest and the Forbidden Forest, including the management of land by outside forces and negative human impacts on the land that stem from a lack of education and awareness about natural systems. So my first point of comparison regards the management of each forest territory. This is a map of the Kakamega Forest in Kenya. The forest is home to 380 species of trees, 7 species of primates, and over 400 species of butterflies. And it provides local residents with financial, medicinal, and different services for their life comforts. The forest is managed primarily by 2 government entities, the Kenya Wildlife Service and the Kenya Forest Service. The Wildlife Service manages the land in the north, which is outlined in blue, and the Forest Service manages the land in the southern part of the territory, which is pretty much everything underneath the blue. Neither of the management strategies of these entities has proven incredibly successful. There's been a lot of ecological harm and social conflict stemming from the different policies and management strategies used. The Kenya Wildlife Service, which is in the north, manages their piece of forest through a no-use strategy. No one is allowed to extract resources from the forest. The only exception is permits given to graze cattle. But if anyone breaks these regulations, they're immediately sent to jail. Frequently, cows are sent to jail as well. The Kenya Forest Service in the south does not strongly enforce its no-use policies of extraction. The effectiveness of each can be seen in the higher levels of biodiversity and ecological success in the north, which is the no-use strategy, and in the intense habitat degradation in the south. The Forbidden Forest, on the other hand, seems to be managed by Dumbledore. Many times we hear centaurs and forest creatures discussing Dumbledore, Voldemort, which kind of gives a perception that he is some sort of liaison between Hogwarts and the forest life. However, each magical creature species seems to have its own leader that has the most control in the forest. So we see Aragog leading the spiders and Bane leading the centaurs. There's often conflict in the centaur species group, but it usually stems from human intervention in the Forbidden Forest. The only visible conflict we really see with the spiders is when Harry and Ron enter the forest. When an out-of-forest being tries to manage the Forbidden Forest, other species retaliate and cause conflict. Perhaps we would have less human nature and biodiversity issues in the Kakamega Forest if humans tried to manage it less. A further point of comparison between these forests regarding land management is the geographic location within the world. The Kakamega Forest is this heavily forested region, it's protected, but there's little to no large-scale developments around the forest. So again, the map of the forest, if I would expand this, you'd see much of the same. But that's not to say that humans don't live around the forest. There are still humans that live in and around the forest, but they live in smaller villages and are often subsistence farmers. Many people depend on the forest resources for their biological needs, but the management in protecting these spaces has, in one way or another, prevented large-scale development from happening in this region. But the impact is still there. Humans are still causing an impact, but I think it's a lot less than it would have been if there was large-scale developments around. The Forbidden Forest, on the other hand, is located very close to a very large development. Hogwarts shares a landmass with the Forbidden Forest. Despite efforts to keep peace, the small distance between the castle and the forest creates a very easy pathway for students to enter the forest. It's just a short walk from where wizarding students spend most of their time. Management around Hogwarts seems to aim at the prevention of human impact. Don't go in the forest, it's bad, you're not allowed to go there. You go there for punishment with a professor and that's it. But the close distance still seems to be an easy pathway for humans to enter and cause disturbances. My next point of comparison and contrast is human impacts on the landscape. The Kakamega Forest allows ecotourism, so trails for walking, camping, hiking in the forest, which causes a lot of ecosystem problems. The formation of trails has led to soil erosion, weed growth, and loss of vegetative ground cover. Trails invite people into the forest. It's easier to walk on a trail, and they're meant for use. But the more literal footprints we see in the Kakamega Forest, the more damage there is to the ground. The impacts of human disturbance in the Kakamega Forest can be seen even in the inside of the forest where there actually are no trails. But those trails still are inviting humans in. So without access to trails, there's a higher probability that humans wouldn't enter the Kakamega Forest, which would decrease the environmental harm. According to interviews with local people in the Kakamega region, they don't feel like they have adequate knowledge and understanding of the importance of the forest biodiversity and the severity of the destruction that they are causing. Residents have never been educated on sustainable harvesting or how to interact with the ecosystem in a way that's not going to cause intense harm. But members of these resource management bureaucracies have. Imagine you have to enter a forest or a natural space with no knowledge of that ecosystem. We could say that bears are allies with humans and are trying to protect us from dangerous squirrels. But if we didn't know that about the forest, we could enter with the fear of bears when they are really our friend and they're there to help us. This parallel inequality of knowledge is causing a lot of harm in the southern region where there's less management control of the forest. And again, we see this lack of adequate knowledge in the Harry Potter series. There are no classes about the Forbidden Forest, or its history, its creatures, the system as a whole. Defense Against the Dark Arts doesn't really focus on the creatures in the forest, and that class has a lot of issues in itself with changing leadership every year. Care of Magical Creatures is the closest we get to the creatures in the Forbidden Forest, but it is taught by an untrained professor, and Hagrid is often portrayed as ignorant or childish. In the Chamber of Secrets, we read, Harry could make out Hermione's neat writing, Ron's untidy scrawl, and even a scribble that looked as though it was from the Hogwarts gatekeeper, Hagrid. This progression of poor writing quality implies that Hagrid's writing is almost illegible, which is something typically attributed to having a lack of education. And this is just one. We see Hagrid, Malfoy talks more about Hagrid often. Hagrid is seen as, he didn't finish Hogwarts, so he's not a professor in some sense. But imagine how the situation would have changed, again in Chamber of Secrets, if Harry and Ron entered the Forbidden Forest with the knowledge that the spiders weren't the monster in the chamber. They entered with the forest with the assumption that Aragog was the monster in the chamber, and this created a lot of tension within the spider community and with the Hogwarts community. They later learned, through their experience with the Pensieve, that Aragog was Hagrid's pet. And they caused a lot of damage entering the situation with no education. If we equipped people with knowledge about natural spaces before they entered natural spaces, their impact could be minimized. Many entities and organizations are still trying to do this, trying to get education first, including the National Park Service and environmental nonprofit organizations. But we have yet to include environmental education in our standardized educational systems. Hogwarts seems to also have failed to include environmental education in their educational system. To avoid the type of interspecies conflict that occurred within the Chamber of Secrets, we need to incorporate some sort of environmental education, and using this series can be one basis for that. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of using literature to talk about environmental concerns. And there's multiple ways. I'm going to focus on a few, but some of the ones that I found in reading the series in this new way is that it can be used to simplify an incredibly complicated system of environmental degradation. It's a lot more enjoyable to read Harry Potter than it is a textbook or a news article. The benefits that I'm going to be focusing on include minimizing the distance in the real world and fantasy world, and mobilizing of the Harry Potter community to create a movement. First, literature moves beyond tangibility to decrease or eliminate the distance between the real and fictional world. The Kakamega Forest all of a sudden doesn't feel as far away when we base it on events that occurred in the Harry Potter series. We as fans and academics of Harry Potter feel much closer to the Forbidden Forest and its creatures than we do to the four-legged creatures in the Kakamega Forest. We understand the dragons, the centaurs, the hippogriffs, their mannerisms, their diets, their interactions with humans, and we can use this information to guide what information we find about the other species in the Kakamega Forest. And this is a fundamental characteristic of fantasy literature. The genre takes elements from the real world, amplifies them, and begs the question, what if? So we're here today. We could be here. And fantasy literature does that by showing us the possibilities of our world. It's simple to get buy-in for a lot of Harry Potter fans on different interpretations or readings or events that happen in the text. And we can use those same strategies to get buy-in for non-fantasy world events. And this becomes incredibly effective when the gap is closed between fantasy narratives and real-world narratives. Finally, there's an incredibly large fan base of Harry Potter, and that community can be a launching point for creating a movement. It is the same as many fictional series. People care about Harry Potter. We all care about the series. We care about the characters. And this level of care can be used to inspire care for the environment. Hermione is a well-loved character. She has a lot of what we consider good qualities of a conservationist. She can be used to create more conservation-minded people. Emma Watson herself, J.K. Rowling, they've been incredible social activists, and we've stood behind them in their endeavors because they are characters, actresses, writer of our shared series. We could do similar things in supporting young climate activists and their pursuits for protecting the natural world. So imagine there's a group of thousands of people outside a forest. Everyone has colored bandanas on their arms. Some are red, some are green, some are yellow, some are blue, and they're devoted to their role in this movement. Red bandanas are the frontliners, their arms are linked, and they're standing in resistance against oppositional forces. All people wearing green are the leaders of smaller groups. They're proud and they get their group excited about what they're doing. Those with yellow bandanas are responsible for keeping peace between the different parties. They're patient and they're loyal to the cause. And the blue people are the planners. They have used their creativity and knowledge to get out of legal and financial issues that often happen in doing this type of public mobilization. These thousands of people are gathered to protect the forest. They have a common goal to protect the creatures that they sympathize with. And after days of standing, sitting, surrounding the forest, they're victorious over encroaching oil and gas development. This is not impossible. Our community, our Harry Potter community, has rallied together behind several different issues, including pushing back against banning the series in many parts of the world. If we can flock to King's Cross Station to celebrate young Albus Severus's journey to Hogwarts, imagine what we can do together around the natural world. So think, how can we rally together around our forbidden forests? Any questions? Do we have some time for questions?
Yes, we have about 5 minutes for questions. Would you like to be my, yes.
I wanted to ask, in the beginning,
Wait, the microphone, please.
sorry. In the beginning of your presentation, you had mentioned that there was a difference between how the North and the South, talking about of course, how they implemented their no-use policy. Do you know if there's like a wealth disparity between the two regions, or like a size disparity, which is why they couldn't have implemented it as well, like as the other region?
I think the biggest difference between the Wildlife Service and the Forest Service is the structure of the agencies as a whole. So the Wildlife Service would most compare to like the National Park Service in America, because they're for multiple uses. They want to see the biodiversity preserved. That's huge. The Forest Service, our Forest Service is very similar in that there is a level of use that they want, because they want the money from timber. The timber industry relies on the Forest Service and those different regulations. So by not enforcing their regulations, they're allowing corporations to come in and use and profit, which then helps the government in return. So it's just a different level of purpose within the agencies.
I'll meet you halfway. Thank you, I really appreciated your talk. I'm a chemistry professor, but a lot of my research was in environmental chemistry. And I'm wondering, I love this call for action, and I feel like I want to do it, but there's this quote that I saw, and I don't even know who to attribute it to, because it was on Facebook, but it was like, in today's political climate, you know, if you're involved with it, you're exhausted. And if you're not involved, you feel morally deficient. You know, how do we rally when, you know, the EPA has less funding and regulations are being slackened, and there seems to be a general, you know, top-down malaise about, if not just the outright disuse and misuse of the environment, and that's how somehow that's profitable apparently. That helps the economy, woohoo, and yet we're making a mess of it. So, and I know you're coming at this from an activist standpoint, but how do you motivate people, maybe who are older than you are, who are tired, you know, who are tired of this fight and feeling like we're always losing?
And I think that is the question. and I want to say that it's the younger generations. It's our job to take ownership and to start acting, because we see Greta Thunberg and she's this role model. She's a role model for young activists, but also I would imagine, I can't speak for people with children. I can't speak for my own mom. I don't know. She's probably reading the Harry Potter series right now. But I would hope that when younger generations start to speak out and act, that inspires other generations to be involved. Because with the increase in education that's happening, we know there's simple ways where you can be an activist that don't necessarily involve this type of going and standing around a forest to protect it. And it's up to the younger generations, I think, to show that it's easy, because we're not yet tired, because we haven't been fighting as long, because we're younger. And it's up to us to mobilize and to share our stories in a way that other generations and other people can understand, and also feel included in the movement without having to feel like they have to be the frontliners.
Great answer.
It's interesting, there's been quite a lot of interest in how the Harry Potter series has affected the generation that grew up with it. I did a study with some honor students at Mary Waldman where we actually looked at exposure to Harry Potter series and environmental attitudes. And it's interesting, we actually found a relationship between how much students identified with Hagrid and their attitudes, particularly their respect for the environment, their pastoral attitudes. So I think that's a fascinating idea. And of course, there have been other studies showing that Harry Potter readers show less prejudice, less stigmatization. So that's actually a nice segue into our next presentation, which thank you very much for